And now we are live. How is everybody doing? Let us know in chat how we're doing. We had a little technical issue today where George was streaming to the wrong event, but we will fix that. All right, we're all set. Welcome everybody on YouTube. This is the Kubernetes office hours. Hold on, let me see here. How's everybody? Can you just check the stream real quick, Jeff, on an actual YouTube feed?
I already did. You sound
Oh,
good.
okay, good. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Kubernetes office hours. This is the third Wednesday of every month. We hop on with a bunch of panelists and we answer a bunch of Kubernetes questions. So we kind of burn through sometimes with some technical issues. Luckily, that only cost us 5 minutes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go right into your questions. I'm going to tell you how it works. And then panelists, when you answer your first question, just give yourself a quick intro and then we'll solve it that way. Yeah? All right. So before we start, let's give you some ground rules. This is a Kubernetes event, so the code of conduct is in effect. So please be excellent to each other. That's in chat and everything. How we sounding? Jacob, welcome. Thank you. This is also a judgment-free zone. Everyone had to start from somewhere, so we don't really have any dumb questions or stupid questions. So feel free to ask whatever question you need in the Slack channel. That is #office-hours on slack.kates.io. And we will do our best to answer it in the time that we have. Feel free to hang out and chat. We like it when people hang out and have their own discussions. If you're in chat now listening, let us know where you are in the world, what you work on, that kind of thing. Say hello. Please be cognizant that the chat is being live streamed on the internet. So while we will do our best to answer your questions, the panel doesn't have access to your cluster. So anything that's live debugging is like off topic. We're not going to SSH into your like cluster or anything like that and dig into your like stuff. But what we will do is at least get you going in the right direction on where you need to go to fix your thing. So while we won't be able to like access your stuff, we'll be able to tell you what logs to look at and things of that nature. Something to help you at least move on in whatever problem you're trying to solve. Panelists, you're encouraged to expand on your answers with your experiences and pro tips. That's why we have you here. And audience, you can help us out by adding your expertise into the chat because that gets put into the video. You can help by pasting in URLs to the official docs, blogs, or anything that might be relevant to the topic at hand. We've been doing these for almost 2 years now, and almost every single session we've learned about a new tool. So that's part of the reason that we have this, a part of the community. You have so many people out working on this stuff that it's really a great place for you to share your expertise. A warning though, if you do too good a job, I might invite you to be on the panel like some of the people that are on here. So it's a good way to pay it forward if you want. Please feel free to start posting your questions in Slack now. Just do question, blah, something that makes it obvious so we can see it. And then we put those into a little HackMD working document, and then we ask all the questions. And then at the end, I take all of the URLs, all the notes, and then we whack it and we toss it on the Kubernetes forums. So you have a link in the reference to all the things that we have been talking about today. You can also help us out by tweeting, spreading the word, and paying it forward. Jeff is going to give you a tweet that he's going to post in chat now for you to retweet because I was streaming to the wrong URL. So you can really help us out by retweeting what Jeff's about to do it or letting a friend know or whatnot. This panel is also made entirely of volunteers. So if you want to rotate in, let us know. We kind of have like a cadre of people that are available, and a week before I say, hey, who's around? And we figure it out. We rotate in. The commitment is about 1 hour a month, but sometimes we have too many people or whatever. So it's just a cool little rotation. And lastly, I'd like to thank all the organizations for allowing their people to hang out with the community and help out. So thanks to VMware, Red Hat, Spectrum, Giant Swarm, Google, Microsoft, StockX, UW, and whatever your affiliation is, those of you out there participating today. So with that, panel, you ready? I see Marco's here in chat. Welcome, Marco. Anybody ready? Ready to go? I am ready for the first question. Is from Simone, who asks, recently I've been playing with a 3-node RabbitMQ cluster. The cluster is deployed as a stateful set with replicas equals 3. For some reason, one of the pods refused to join the cluster. This led to some readiness, liveliness, and entry points to fail. So one of the pods refused to start. According to the RabbitMQ docs, the way to solve this is to issue a reset command. But how can I do that if the pod refuses to run? I also thought of changing the entry point or the readiness probes, but this would have impacted the other pods since they are replicas. Removing the readiness probe could prevent them to start in the right order, for example. I ended up resetting the RabbitMQ cluster in a somewhat less orthodox way, but this is not something I would have done in production environment. I wondered if I could have recovered it in some other way, possibly less application specific. Like, for example, if I could get a command to run in a pod that has the problems on starting, or if I could override the readiness/liveliness/entry point for specific replica or something else entirely. Panel, what do we think?
I mean, my initial thought is whenever something like that happens, I just delete the pod, but I think that's a bad thing in this case.
Anybody else? This is a question that was posted earlier in the month, so I don't know if Simone is here to answer any follow-up questions.
I think it was asked today, to be honest. But for me, deleting the pod would not work because it's a stateful set, right? I think it's the DNS that is misbehaving in this case. I had a similar issue before, and I'm actually quite not sure how I solved it right now.
Yeah, I do remember
Simone
too,
is
now
here.
that you
Sorry.
said it, that I've seen DNS issues with stateful sets where DNS was stuck kind of on an old IP. And this was how they could. But usually it should then be the other way around, that like the pod, like one of the pods is not reachable, and not that the pod cannot reach the rest. Not really sure what the issue there was.
Oh, Simone is here. So he says deleting the pod
Yes.
resulting in it restarting with the exact same state.
I think it's like super specific to RabbitMQ because somehow one node couldn't actually join the cluster. And if you would like try to modify like readiness probes or liveliness probes to actually actually execute that reset command, I think it's gonna like reset your cluster. So you might be like losing data or something. So I would definitely like check out RabbitMQ cluster, try to figure out why that single pod didn't manage to join the cluster, because it's super specific to this application.
Yeah, he actually says the issue was apparently due to RabbitMQ internal state.
Yeah, so most probably the focus should be not on the pod that is not working, but on the ones that are and are basically not letting the other one in. So most probably the commands or the bug fixing needs to be done on the existing cluster there. But I've almost not worked with RabbitMQ, so not sure what to do there at all.
And Marco says, could you exec into one of the other two pods and inspect/modify the state? Interesting. Ming, welcome. Yes, bringing your own Stack Overflow question is definitely on topic. We'll put that in the queue and get to it. Thanks for dropping by. It was something like the node thinks to be joined to the cluster, but the other nodes disagree. The official way to recover from this is launch RabbitMQ control reset. But how?
Yeah.
So is this like a Rabbit quorum issue?
Yeah, so I think the reset needs to be sent to the quorum, so to the existing two. So one of the existing two pods should accept it. But not sure what it results. Like it might just reset your cluster and you might lose the data, which is most probably also not what you want in production.
Yeah. Had 2 working nodes out of 3, so no quorum issues. Huh.
But you can't really have I guess you can have a quorum when you have like 2 nodes.
I mean, the issue he has, he cannot execute the command on the pod that is restarting because it's not lively, like it's not ready. So how can you pause the readiness and liveliness endpoints for just this one pod or just this one replica?
And why only that one?
Because you have to execute the command on that one pod, as far as I understood his questioning.
And he says the way he fixed it was to completely remove the persistent volume, but that sounds like a brute force.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Marcos is the nuclear option. Yeah. Man. Any other thoughts on this?
I was just going to ask what the RabbitMQ community had to say about this issue. I'm so sure it's probably not the first time someone's come across that. So if their solution is to run that RabbitMQ reset, or is there another way, like spin up a pod, run that reset, or something? I've unfortunately not played around with RabbitMQ, but just trying to think of any other debugging workarounds for it.
And Alexander posted 2 RabbitMQ operators. I wonder if those are designed to not work around this issue, but just like.
Yeah, I was going to say he really needs to engage with the community, because I guarantee you other people have ran into this and gotten frustrated and just like use the heavy-handed solution. But maybe there's a better solution out there, so they can be put in the docs, kind of a warning for people that are deploying.
Yeah.
So
maybe one thing to kind of circumvent the issue in the future would be to give yourself a bit more time and maybe have less aggressive probes. So you have a bit of time to run a debug container against that and run the reset commands before it's just getting restarted all the time. So, some readiness wait of 60 seconds or so to give yourself the time to run that reset command against it. Would just mean that the containers are starting a bit slower, but if it's just on the startup, then like giving yourself even 2 minutes should be fine.
First advice I came up was to run the reset, and then digging another, I found the tip about completely removing the cluster state. And then Chris Millsad here has some advice. He's like, maybe come up with some sort of a init container to fix the issues. Maybe that along with the delay. And he mentions like the MySQL pattern in the Kubernetes docs, which uses init containers to prepare all the replicas to make sure it all works. Sorry about the kid, everybody. I've got a toddler running around upstairs, so that's going to be a thing all session. Any other advice here before we're all tapped out?
The only thing I can think of maybe is run a cron job to check the state every now and then. And
yes, children are not allowed on the bridge. He went right to the Wesley Crusher quote. Couldn't. This next question is kind of long, so I left a link in there. This one's from. Yeah, Simone, hopefully that will give you some ideas. I'm kind of interested to seeing. I mean, obviously nuking it from orbit is an option, but and that did fix the problem, but hopefully there's like a cleaner, more recommended way. But I would be very interested to know. And if you do find out, if you could let us know, that would be fantastic and help out. So I think we're all tapped out. Any other creative solutions that we can think of before we move on? All right, thanks, Simone. What we do here is when we read your questions, you will be entered in a t-shirt giveaway contest. So I will be giving away 2 shirts at the end of the session. So stick around, everybody. You have to wait till the end though for the raffle. So moving on, we have this question from Jay Morcar, which is actually kind of long because they posted. He pinged the API and got a bunch of information. So hey. Anyone had used Telegraph with an F Kubernetes input plugin inside of a pod? This call to the Kubernetes API URL. I'm wondering if it'd be just easier to repost this one here. Has anyone looked at this one yet?
I just started reading it because I noticed it was a link.
Yeah. So here's a question. Sorry, that's a long one, and I didn't want to read. The outputs of a curl command out on the podcast. So he's basically getting a 404 error, and then he's filed an issue there, which is here in GitHub. So I will give the panel a few minutes to digest that. Does anyone want to take this one and read one so I could do the next one? because we have enough panelists. I think we could split up. Yeah, Waleed, it's pretty long. Who's gonna read this one, and then we can move on to this nutty server one. Anyone?
I got it.
Were you doing nonverbal communication? Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, sorry. I raised my hand.
I can't see my screen. Okay, perfect. All right, so Jeff's gonna investigate that one and get back to us. We're moving on. A question from Prashant Rathor says, I have an external nutty server, not in a cluster. How can I share the same WebSocket connection from my pods clients to this external server? I need multiple pods so that messages sent by the service can be distributed, but I don't want the service to have separate connection for each pod. Thoughts? And you get to hear my dog today.
Are those pods like different, or are they like different parts of the same service? Or could you just put them behind a service and an ingress, and then
Yeah, I was going to say labels probably is the best way to do this, or differing deployments / replica sets.
Yeah, most probably put the same label on them and abstract them away behind the service, and then, but they need, like, I think all the pods should receive the same traffic at the same time, or should it be load balance around the pods?
It sounds messages sent by the service can be distributed. So it sounds like they more want to load balance than.
Oh, for me, I interpreted it like he wants to share the WebSocket connection between multiple pods, which in itself should not be possible. Like there needs to be, Maybe Jeff wants to say something.
Licensed network traffic there, I think.
Jeff was saying he can answer this.
Oh,
one.
no, sorry. The last one.
That's for another one? Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry.
Gotcha. Okay.
My bad.
Yeah.
Any other tips for Prashant here?
I mean, he can extract it away and put like another service that connects to the external WebSocket connection. But that will be like a lot more work instead of just doing multiple WebSocket connections. So that would be like the second option I would go to. If multiple WebSocket connections are not possible, I would have one services that kind of manages the WebSocket connection and redirects the traffic to the other services.
Yeah, and maybe if we knew more about the use case, we would be able to give some hints at other solutions, because I'm not sure, like, from this question what the use case would be, and if that is like a good way of doing this, or if it's a more ugly workaround. But there might be a good reason to do an ugly workaround, because it might be legacy software and you might not be able to change it. But most probably then, like Pierre said, you need to put something in front of it to make up for the downsides of your legacy stuff.
All right, moving on. Jeff looks like he's AFK, so we'll get back to
No,
him.
I'm good.
Oh, no, there you are.
Yeah. So they actually answered it themselves, well, kind of answered it themselves with some help from raw code, actually. There were a couple of problems. One, they didn't have RBAC set up with this Helm chart. It was a Helm chart that was installing Telegraph. And the other thing was, it was pointed out you need to use the downward API proxy rather than just trying to hit Kubernetes. So once they sorted those things out, they were pointing to the correct IP, which they were just getting from environment variables in the pod. Everything worked.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah, so in the GitHub issue that he linked, the entire conversation is there, and the answer is there as well.
Oh, awesome. Great. Thanks for digging in that. Shout out to Rockcode. Great guy. Next question is from Felix, and this is another long one. So, hi all, waiting the next office hours. Meanwhile, I have a problem with the volume and a security context that the pods are running with. I have a security context for a stateful set that runs the containers as user1, but a volume config map are mounted as root. I don't understand why. Can someone explain to me what happened here? And then they pasted their blah-conf.conf. Is that blah as in like they redacted that, or well, whatever? What do we think here? I'm not familiar with this, but wouldn't you specify the users under the volume mount section?
I'm just checking this API spec because I'm
okay,
sure it is this way as well. But
yeah. I was gonna say I'm pretty sure when you mount the config map, I believe you can specify the permissions that it should be mounted as. So
right.
Yeah, I think that feature got added at some point.
Yeah,
in older versions, the workaround was basically having an init container that sets the permissions from root to something else. But in newer Kubernetes versions, there is actual spec fields for that. I don't remember which ones.
And someone is replying. Let's see what they have to say. Sorry, everybody. When it's a thread, makes it a little bit more difficult for you. This is a very, so Alexander, welcome, says this is a very long running issue on GitHub. Only groups are defined, not user. And then Joel Speed, hey, Joel says it's a limitation how the mount system works. I've looked into this before about 6 months ago. Unless anything has changed, you can only mount config maps as root. And then Alexander confirms the volume mount user is always root.
Yeah, so I think the workaround I've seen before someone apply was basically going in with an init container and just changing things.
I was choning the world.
Yeah, it's not beautiful, but
yeah,
works kind of.
I guess we've seen uglier. All right. Well, unfortunately, that's probably not the answer you were looking for, but it seems to be the right one. It looks like people are still typing in here, though. So let's see what happens here. Alexander has linked to the issue that we are talking about. It is 2630. Volumes are created in container with root ownership and strict permissions. I'll make sure that makes it to the notes. And there's a related discussion and everything. Joel mentions this really annoyed me when trying to get Prow to run as non-root. The init container solution is about all you can do. Yeah. So Joel agrees. And Pierre's dropped in a link there to the relevant documentation. So that should help you out. All right. Moving on, those of you listening, feel free to keep asking questions. Just start to type them in the channel. We're almost caught up in the queue here. If at some point we miss your question or it's not obvious, just feel free to ping me and just repost it in. But put it in the channel. Don't PM me because I have so many windows open. I have no idea what's going on. So moving on, Emmanuel asks, since Kubernetes 1.18 was released, I encountered a lot of problems with the Metal Load Balancer external IP. All the services of type load balancer don't get the address. It remains in a pending state. I've checked the Metal LB logs and I didn't find anything apparently meaningful for the problem. I'm working on a virtual environment deployed automatically, so I'm 100% sure that nothing has changed in the configs. That's nice. The only thing's changed is the Kubernetes version. I've tried to deploy the cluster from scratch many times, but the result was the same. I've tried a Kubernetes manual installation too, but the result is the same. I've used this configuration for 3 months without any problems. So I know that before Kube 1.18 all worked as expected. Has anyone experienced a similar issue? So let's see here.
Whenever I hear a Metal LB question, I just look at Bob.
Yeah. I don't know if Bob was listening.
As far as I know, I am going to go double check, but nothing in 1.18 should have impacted load balancers. I'm going to go check though.
I don't remember any networking changes in 1.18.
And Jeff, as you're grabbing through the changelogs, feel free to drop the changelog website URL in the chat because that's handy.
Oh, I'm gonna.
Yes. Huh. And it doesn't sound like they upgraded their version of Metal LB, right? The only change was upgrading to 1.18.
One idea that I have is maybe like a long shot, but maybe you're like in MetalLB, you define an address pool, which basically what addresses to use for external IPs. Maybe you're like out of IPs or something, because it seems like a MetalLB issue more than anything else. So I would definitely check what's your pool range and what actual IPs are used.
And Alexander does remind us that there were networking changes in 1.18 because IPv6 went to beta.
Maybe they're using IPv6. That would be a surprise, but some people do.
Yeah, and I'm just looking through all the latest issues here on MetalLB, and I don't see anything relevant to the problem. I feel like this is a hard one unless we were looking at like actual logs.
Well, the problem there is theoretically there aren't any logs.
Yeah.
I will say,
or what the output is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I will say from like my experience, I would have immediately thought that you're out of IPs as well, because I've run into that. That's like, why is it pending? Because it can't hand out any. But
what I would also do is try running MetalLB with like the book logs on or something. Maybe it's actually trying to do something, but it's not logging in like in warning or error log.
Yeah, and Alexander mentions strace always helps. Just see what the process is doing. I mean, something could be out of. I mean, I don't know. Oh, Emmanuel's here. Awesome. Says the change I see is Cube 1.18 is the precedence of managed fields. I've never seen or used them before. I'm testing in a /24 network that is free for 90% of the IPs. So he's pretty sure he's not running out of IPs. But they're still typing. Let's see. I'm using a /28 as an IP pool reserved to me. Right. So I'm curious of what the strace would say. Any other recommendations here?
Maybe what CNI are they using? Because it might be CNI related. It might not just be 118, but might be a result of 118 on a component like the CNI.
Yeah, and then Joel says managed fields is to do with the new server-side apply, if I recall correctly. And I don't see any issues reported on the MetalLB site. So I feel like if this was a like a general, like if MetalLB was just outright broken, right? Someone would have filed an issue already with 1.18, right? Because we're what, a week out, 2 weeks out?
They added something quick.
Okay.
Notice the MetalLB config map YAML definition sometimes invert the YAML fields. That shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually normal.
Yeah.
Calico. I don't know. Which version of Calico? Maybe there's. No. I know that CNI got updated in 1.18, I think, to 0.85, but I'm not sure if that has any implications on Calico.
The other question I have is what mode are you running in for MetalLB? Because you can run it in BGP and I think layer 2.
All right, we'll give them time to type. And then Ming Ming, your Stack Overflow question is next.
Also, the last question that we currently have queued up. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in.
He says layer 2.
I'm just thinking, are you getting any errors in the kubelet or kube API that might give you any breadcrumbs?
The next question is a CRD question. If one of you panelists who are into CRDs want to start cheating here while we... Looks like we can at least rule out a bunch of stuff, right? People are typing. When did 118 come out? It was last week, right?
A week or two ago, yeah.
Bob, if you're back, we have a Metal LB question. I don't know if he's AFK still or not.
7 days ago. You're right, 1 week, George.
Yeah. I was gonna say if Metal LB was just outright broken on 1.18, I think you'd see a bug, like an issue, almost immediately, right? So there's got to be something specific. I didn't check the Cube API. If you think that could help, I will do it ASAP. So, question here for the panelists, actually. Is it always just a good idea to check the Cube? I know this seems like advanced common sense, but does everything... Well, everything has to go through there, right? So there would be a log of something, right?
So
yeah,
I mean,
find... Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say Kubernetes and everything involved in Kubernetes, it's a distributed system. So
Right.
there may be some things in like an area you think is unrelated that will have breadcrumbs. Like it's best just to capture all of the logs. In all of our CI jobs, we literally capture everything about the state, all of the logs, everything that was running, literally everything, just so we can debug, because again, distributed system.
Right.
Yeah. So in my experience, I've had pods that's kind of come up and just hang. They seem like they're doing okay, or they're timing out, just like weird little things like that. And you find the error in either the kubelet or the Kube API, mostly like TLS things.
Like Ravi's next question, which we'll get to here in a minute. Right. The log is pretty explicit there about a TLS bad certificate. Right. So, all right. So Emmanuel, it sounds like check out the Kube API logs. If I don't know if you have access to the cluster now, check it out and then maybe report back. But that sounds like a good place to start. Any other tips here that we can figure out as far as Metal LB?
I would basically also go through the network, so kubeproxy and Calico, and see if things get stuck there. Not sure what does Metal LB use for getting to pods? Is it services or?
So Metal LB really just is a load balancer provider. It's not really trying. Is it like? Sorry, what are you asking?
Like does it load balance to services or to
Yes.
to endpoint IPs?
As far as I know,
directly?
services.
Okay, so that might be kubeproxy then.
But again, the issue is that IP is not assigned to new
Load balancer.
Load balancer.
But then it's outside, right?
Yeah. So it feels like somewhere in like Metal LB control loop, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So yeah, like if you can like turn on debug logs on Metal LB or strace it, definitely look at Kube API logs for like any like error forbidden or like some kind of like, I don't know, airbag issues for Metal LB.
Right. Okay, well, Emmanuel, let us know how that goes. Hopefully that'll give you plenty of places to start looking. Okay, thanks everyone for joining. We have about 20 minutes left. Welcome to the Kubernetes office hours. Just hang out and hash office-hours in slack.case.io. Ask your question. We'll queue it up and answer it in the best way possible. And then at the end, we'll give away a bunch of t-shirts and everyone will have a good time. The next question is from Ming Ming, which is a link to a Stack Overflow question, which I'm going to repost here. Always appreciate it when people bring their own questions with the detail already formatted. So I will go ahead and link that in there. And says, I created a CRD like this. And then feel free to read the link there. And I noticed that I reuse PodSpec from the core API group in my CRD. To avoid user-applied invalid YAML files, I decided to add validation logic in my CRD controller for simple fields like name. It's easy to check its correctness using a regular expression, while for complex and native kind like PodSpec, since Kubernetes already has validation logic for that. I feel the right way is to reuse that in my controller. but how can I do that? Jeff's already got his hand up.
So if you're trying to unmarshal YAML into that, it should automatically validate because it's trying to validate against the pod spec type. And like in my own development of controllers, one of the things that I've done if I'm dealing with so one of the things that I'm working on, it receives a string that is YAML, and I just try and unmarshal that into the correct type, and that validates it or not. Now later on in the Stack Overflow, they also point out that there is a validate pod spec method, but it should actually fail if pod spec, like if they try to apply a YAML with that.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to get the link to the pod spec thing here in chat there. And Chris wants you to bring your cap back. Okay, any other feedback? This one seems pretty straightforward.
Because it's validation mentioned there, maybe what they want is also to get like actual CRD validation on the API, so like open API schema validation, which is basically, I think what you need to do there is you need to copy over what is in the schema for a pod into your CRD schema. To get kind of the whole, because there's a mention of regex, which is usually used in the schema validation if you want to do more complex things. So I'm not sure if what they want is actual validation in the controller or if it's validation in the API. If it's in the API, you need to define it in the Open API schema of the CRD that you define. Not sure where you define that in KubeBuilder. Not much experience with KubeBuilder. Maybe someone else does.
You can define it in the labels and comments to the right of it and above the types. The other thing is if they are looking for more than just this is valid, this is not valid, if they're looking for more than just that Boolean, they want specifics on what's invalid, then things like the validation package in Kubernetes, like the validate pod spec will actually do like down to the field level validation.
All right. Any other comments here? All right, this next one's from Ravi. Welcome. It says, I'm getting the following errors from API server logs. Does anyone have any idea what these errors are and how to fix it? Prometheus alerts API server errors high. If you actually scroll up just a tad a little bit there, panel, you'll see his post. This is the one I had mentioned earlier before, where he's clearly getting a TLS handshake error for a bad certificate. Thoughts on this one? Oh, wow. I was expecting you all to know this one. Okay.
I mean, you clearly seem to know the answer.
Oh, I mean, I'm just reading what the log says, but
the question is, what
how
is
related is that to the
like what is doing that request? Is it like what is that behind that IP that is trying to request the API server?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are any other services in your cluster getting a similar error, or is it just that Prometheus pod that's throwing the issue?
I think Prometheus is just reporting that this error is happening a lot.
Right.
But yeah, I would check where this IP, the one with the 41,000 port, is coming from.
And like what you can do there is like kubectl get pods hyphen big A and then like hyphen O wide, I think, outputs AIPs. Yeah.
And it might even be something from the outside.
That's true.
Or maybe if you're on the cloud, it might be your load balancer or something. But yeah,
all right.
It looks like an internal IP.
Any other tips on this one? Here's a question from Zhang. This is an interesting one. Why can't kubeadmin certificates be valid for 10 or 100 years? It's too painful. When we deliver Kubernetes to the customer's production environment, we need to manually compile the kubeadmin source or manually create a large number of certificates. Can't you just give us an optional parameter or variable to flexibly configure this option? Anyone have opinions here?
I think you can. Like if you really want to. It's not very secure, to be honest. Not rotating your certificate is not something you would recommend from a security perspective. But if you want to, kubeadm does support your own certificates. So you could create a certificate that is valid for quite a long time and then give it to kubeadm.
Yeah, and I remember in 1.18 something about certificate rotation.
You could also just provide Kubernetes with a CA and the signing key and let it rotate the certificates for you. At least for kubelets, it does.
Yeah, so Kubernetes one contains kubelet certificate, a beta feature that will automatically generate a new key and request a new certificate from the Kubernetes API as the current certificate approaches expiration. Because the default here says is 1 year, which sounds like that's still right? I think it defaults to a year.
Yeah, I think so.
Are people nodding? Okay, good.
Yeah. It
Once the new
defaults to 4
certificate,
versions.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Once the new certificate is available, it's used for authenticating connections to the Kubernetes API. So this is where I am reading this here.
Yeah, from a security standpoint, you should definitely rotate certificates. And I would even recommend more often than a year because Kubernetes does not support revocation of certificates. So if one of your certificates gets out, people have access to your cluster for a full year, almost.
Right.
Or 100 years if you want to give out 100 year.
Yeah.
It's maybe not going to fly with your security.
It's almost like they picked that length on purpose to remind you that your cluster is about to fall out of support, right?
Yeah.
Let me find here something for you, Zhang, because I do know that the kubeadmin folks actually run their own office hours regularly as well. So that's probably a question that I would. Sometimes we have a kubeadmin expert here, but I would just link you up directly to the authors of the tool. The reason I say that, especially with things like kubeadmin, is they try to cover so many use cases that sometimes without the background on why a default was chosen, it can be difficult to figure out why they would choose that. So I will find out the link to kubeadmin office hours. Here we go. It's Wednesdays at. Here we go. So Zhang, check this out here. kubeadmin's part of SIG cluster lifecycle. And if you click here and you scroll down about halfway, there's a kubeadmin office hours. Of course, there's a kubeadmin Slack channel as well if you just want to ping them on there. So that's Wednesdays at 9 a.m. PT weekly. So that is today in 2 hours, right? Because that conflicts with our office hours that we're doing again in 2 hours. So if you want to talk directly to the kubeadmin authors, that is a good place to go. But this rotation feature in 1.18 seems pretty dope. So it might be worth investigating that as well. So I hope that answers your question. Any other comments here on kubeadmin and certificates? All right. We've got about 10 minutes left, so it's time for 2 or 3 more questions. So keep lining them up. Next question from Sammy, who says, I have a scenario where I see sometimes the endpoints do not get created even when the pod is running service is there and labels are matching. I did see this blog from Dollar Shave Club, but it didn't help. Finally ended up writing my own Python script to handle this scenario where when you delete and recreate the service, it immediately gets created. So let me... any comments on this one? But this should not happen, ideally. Any thoughts on this? Sorry, here we're just wrangling the questions. Well, today I learned Dollar Shave Club runs on Kubernetes. That's always good to know. Panel, anything on this one?
So in one of my old production environments, but I mean, this is like 3 or 4 versions ago, I also saw this happening, and I would just delete the service and recreate the service. But yeah, it's weird because I also like I could never recreate it, and it would just happen maybe once every 3 or 4 months.
Any other ideas here?
I'm looking at that blog which person referenced, and it looks like it was like a Kube API throttling issue. So basically, after controller manager sort of sends a lot of requests, it just sort of throttles itself. And the way they fixed it is they basically tuned up Kube API QPS flag and Kube API burst flag, which seems like a reasonable fix. So yeah, I guess try that.
Any other tips on this before we make fun of Basil?
Yeah, I would make sure it's actually the same problem. Like if you're seeing the same issues in the controller manager, that it's getting throttled. Not sure if you see that on the controller manager logs or the API logs. Then I would definitely adjust that. Otherwise, you would definitely need to go deeper and see where it's actually coming from. Because yeah, the Python script might help, but maybe you even have an actual issue in Kubernetes found, and if you can reproduce it and there is an issue there, then we should definitely know upstream and see how it can be fixed.
And Alexander has a note here for the cert rotation. Unfortunately, either Kubernetes doc nor kubeadmin support good CA cert rotation mechanism. So it makes sense to at least generate the etc/pki ca.crt and key manually. That was referencing to the previous question before. Okay, so any other tips here for Sammy? We are running out of time here. Jeff's about ready to fire up the old Dungeons and Dragons dice and give away 2 t-shirts here. And the last question, here we go. Thanks, Pierre. I was waiting for that one. Rodrigo Villablanca, welcome, says, I'm just wondering why Kubernetes is using Make and Bazel. I made a simple PR for an error handling, and I had several CI stages fail because of Bazel.
We're getting rid of Bazel. There. That's it.
Okay.
That's the end of it. Bazel is going away. Even the creator of Bazel was like, nope, never mind.
Is that a quote?
I mean,
nah, never mind. Okay. And Pierre's linked the issue there. I'm sure that has the entire backstory, right? If this is the issue, I think it is.
It is the issue you think it is.
Yes. Yeah.
I was muted. Yeah, but it's the one to Bazel or not to Bazel, and I guess the conclusion was also reached in there, as far as I know.
Yeah. Anytime you link on a GitHub issue and it has like the fold in it that says load more items, you know it's going to be a good one. So hopefully that will answer your question there. It looks like Alexander's typing. Anybody else? We might have time for one more question before Jeff gives away the t-shirts. I'll go ahead and start outroing here. If someone has a really good question, we could do it. So with that, Jeff is going to pick 2 people. Here's the way it works. When you come to office hours and we address one of your questions on air, we give away 2 t-shirts. So these are the Dope Kubernetes t-shirts from the CNCF store. The way it works is we'll announce the 2 winners, and then I will PM you a code, and you go to store.cncf.io, apply the code for your Kubernetes shirt, and you get it for free. Also, if anybody wonders where all these awesome people are getting all these cool Kubernetes shirts, you can find those always at store.cncf.io. And as always, a special thanks to the CNCF for sponsoring the t-shirt giveaway. So Jeff, who are 2 winners today?
We got Emmanuel and Ravi.
All right. So Emmanuel and Ravi, if you're around, you have won a Kubernetes t-shirt. I will PM you right after this show. And as I organize the notes and everything. Last call for URLs or anything. What I like to do is I will scrub through all of the URLs in the past hour, and we'll shove them in the show notes, and we will stick those in the forums. Users, feel free to hang out. We are going to go live again in about 2 hours for the West Coast US edition. So we try to time it so one session's useful for Europeans and one's for the West Coast, and those of us stuck in the middle, both of them are useful for us. And as always, everything we do here is open source and public and written down. So if you have interest in running your own office hours in your time zone or want to help volunteer any of these things, we would always appreciate that help. Something we are working on this cycle is to bring more topic. We're going to keep these generic office hours, but we're thinking about doing things like we would have an additional office hours once per month on a specific topic. So right now we're thinking maybe next month we will just do ingress, right? And then we're going to grab a bunch of ingress questions and then just have the one canonical episode on ingress, and then just move from Kubernetes component to component based around various themes and things like that. But we'll always keep the general ones, these general sessions, open as well, because they're always useful, because you never know what problems people are having. So with that, any last questions? Pierre? Oh, Pierre has a tool recommendation for the day. That's Lens. I think I actually saw this one yesterday. This one was trending. This was on Hacker News a few days ago, wasn't it? This is the IDE.
I'm not sure where I saw it. I think I saw it on a different Slack 2 weeks ago. And since then, I've been carrying it around. I have used it a bit. I found it quite nice. Because for me, it really helped like bringing people that are not so familiar with Helm, Kubernetes, and so on to just like give them a tool to explore a bit on the dev and staging clusters. So found it quite nice.
Did they spin it off into its own namespace? Because I see it's Contenta Lens. I remember it being called that. I'm wondering if
it was, but it was a paid tool as far as I know before. Like I did a little bit of research, and they were able to open source it as far as I know.
Oh, dope.
Don't quote me on it. So
awesome. All right, and with that, Emmanuel and Ravi, I'll follow you with the t-shirts. Last call. Anybody? Panel? Dave and Mario, you got off light today. See, Mario, like we had a session where we only had Helm questions and you weren't here, and we're like, "Where's Mario?" And now you sit here the entire hour and not a single Helm question.
Oh my god! Yeah, no EKS, no Helm, no auto scaling really.
Oh man, that was awesome though. That was fun to hear the diversity in the questions lately. Like they seem to take a pattern where like we go on a thing and it's like the whole hour is like the same sort of question almost. So that was lots of certificate talk today. That's good.
Yeah. So. And Dave, do you have a good time hanging out?
Yeah, I run when I start hearing about certificates. So.
The age-old issue.
Yep. Oh, and Sammy has a link actually for Rancher created clusters. They have a certificate rotation mechanism, so check out that link there. And with that, we're going to sign. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
In my past life, we were using RKE for cluster management, and it was nice just to do RKE -- rotate cert, and then.
And that was it.
That was it.
Oh, dope. Awesome. All right. And with that, we're going to sign off. We'll be back in 2 hours with our West Coast edition. Once I fix the YouTube URLs, it's going to be a hot mess for me, but it will be fine. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. Panels, stick around for a second. And for everybody else, we'll see everybody next month, always the third Wednesday of every month. Thanks for participating and enjoy. Stay safe out there, everyone.